The 1930s. History remembers the headlines, the crash, the breadlines, the dust storms. But what about the ordinary moments, the morning routines, the family dinners, the small joys that kept people going? These rare photographs reveal what daily life truly looked like, not the crisis, but the life that continued despite it. Subscribe to see what history left out. This is a street in the 1930s. The world had changed overnight, but daily life continued. People still walked these sidewalks, visited these shops, and carried on with their routines. Life finds a way, even in the hardest times. Inside a typical 1930s living room, heavy furniture, patterned rugs, and a radio in the corner. Families gathered here every evening to listen, talk, and simply be together. The living room was the heart of every home. Here is something most people forget. The 1930s were not colorless. Fashion was vibrant, elegant, and full of life. Black and white photographs hide the truth. Behind every gray image, real colors and real style existed. The automobile revolution continued into the 1930s. On the same street, you could see cars, trams, and horse-drawn carriages side by side. Three eras of transportation sharing one road, the old world and new world still overlapping. New technology was changing homes in the 1930s, electric dryers, washing machines, and vacuum cleaners became more affordable. Tasks that once took all day could now be done in hours. Modern convenience was born in these kitchens. Here's a photograph that might disturb modern viewers. Children in the 1930s played games reflecting the darker world around them. What they found normal would shock parents today. The first self-service markets appeared during this era. Before this, clerks handed you everything from behind counters. Now customers could touch, compare, and choose for themselves. Shopping was becoming a completely new experience. Suburban living spread during this decade. Vegetable gardens were necessities born from economic hardship, not hobbies. Some historians believe this era gave birth to the modern middle class. Family portraits like this one were treasures back then. Someone in your family might have posed exactly like this. Their faces, their clothes, their hopes. Photographs were proof that a family existed and mattered. Laundry day in the 1930s was a full day of work. Washing, wringing, hanging, and ironing took hours. By the time everything was done, it was almost time to start again. Housework never truly ended. Kitchens were transforming during this era. Running water, electric stoves, and new appliances made cooking easier. Women spent hours here every day preparing meals from scratch. The kitchen was the busiest room in every home. The economic crisis did not affect everyone equally. While millions struggled, many wealthy families preserved their fortunes. Same decade, same streets, completely different realities. Wealth and hardship side by side. School in the 1930s was strict and formal. Students sat in rows, raised their hands for permission, and followed rules without question. Discipline came first. Education looked very different then, but learning still happened. Men dressed sharply in the 1930s. Suits with wide lapels, polished shoes, and hats were essential. Going outside without a hat was unthinkable. A man's appearance reflected his self-respect, no matter his income. Every evening, families gathered around the radio like we gather around screens today. News, music, comedy shows, and dramas filled the room. The radio brought the world into their living rooms for the first time. Here is a detail that surprises most people. Television was born in the late 1930s. The first screens were tiny, barely the size of a postcard. Few could afford one, but the future had arrived. Despite economic hardship, nightlife in the 1930s was surprisingly alive. Dance halls and clubs offered escape. People dressed up and forgot their troubles for a few precious hours. This was the 1930s. Not just the crisis you read about in books, but the real daily life that continued despite everything. Which detail surprised you most? Tell me in the comments. Now let us meet the faces of this unforgettable decade. An ordinary woman whose name we will never know. In a decade when women challenged every boundary, who knows what quiet heroism filled her daily life? Amelia Earhart became the first woman to fly solo across the Atlantic Ocean. In the 1930s, aviation became a symbol of female freedom. She proved that courage had no gender. Shirley Temple became America's sweetheart during the darkest years. Her smile brought hope to millions, struggling through hard times. A child star who helped a nation forget its troubles. A construction worker stands on a steel beam hundreds of meters above New York. No safety harness, no protection. The skyline we admire today was built by men who risked everything. Hollywood offered escape in the 1930s. Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, became more than an actor. He represented the American ideal. Movie stars gave people permission to dream again. Jesse Owens won 4 gold medals at the 1936 Berlin Olympics, a Black American athlete defeating the myth of racial superiority on Nazi soil. His victory was more than sport, it was history. The hard times did not touch everyone equally. Looking at these smiling faces, one can guess this family had more than most. Same decade, very different realities. Women became more visible in the workforce during the 1930s. Secretarial work was seen as the modern profession for women. Independence came one paycheck at a time. A soldier and his bride pose for their wedding portrait. His slight smirk, her enormous bouquet. They married between wars, hoping for peace. Love found a way, even in uncertain times. Eleanor Roosevelt transformed what it meant to be First Lady. She was not just a host, but a voice for the voiceless. She fought for workers, women, and civil rights. Her legacy still inspires us today. A migrant worker at a California camp. Look at her face for a moment. Fear and hope competing in the same expression. Millions carried that same look across dusty roads, searching for any work they could find. George Gershwin blended jazz with classical music and created something new. In the 1930s, he gave American music its own identity. Rhapsody in Blue became the sound of a nation. Babe Ruth, the greatest baseball player of his era. In 1930, he earned $80,000, more than the president himself. Sports heroes gave people something to cheer for when times were hard. Bonnie and Clyde became the most famous outlaws of the 1930s. The economic crisis turned criminals into folk heroes. They robbed banks that had robbed the people. Legend was born. A mother holds her child close. In the hardest years, mothers were the anchor. When everything else failed, this bond remained. Love was the only certainty. A wedding portrait from Ireland, June 1930. They vowed forever when tomorrow was never guaranteed. Marriage meant believing in the future despite everything. An unemployed man lies on a New York pier, 1935. His coat is old, his future uncertain. Millions shared his fate during these years. Behind every statistic was a human being with dreams and a story. Old family portraits like this one were treasures in the 1930s. Someone in your family might have posed exactly like this, dressed in their finest clothes. Now let us see how they spent their days. Not every child woke up to a warm breakfast. This young girl sits in a home with newspaper-covered walls for insulation. Her face reflects the resilience of families who survived with almost nothing. Life demanded strength every single day. A simple scene from daily life in the 1930s. Laundry hanging on the line. If clothes are getting dirty and washed, life is continuing. Even the smallest routines proved that families refused to give up. A grocery store in Chicago, 1930s. Shopping was a social ritual back then. Here is something to consider. A single aisle in today's supermarket probably holds more products than this entire store did. Milkmen delivered fresh dairy to every doorstep in the 1930s. These special trucks were designed for stand-up driving, so drivers could hop in and out quickly. Home delivery was part of daily life. Women's clubs were powerful spaces for social support in the 1930s. Members of the Ocean Beach Women's Club gather on their clubhouse porch circa 1931. These communities gave women a voice outside the home. Here is something that surprises most people. In the 1930s, being heavy was a sign of wealth and success, not a health concern. This photograph shows members of the Fat Men's Club of New York. Children in the 1930s rarely had store-bought toys. They invented their own games using sticks, stones, and endless imagination. Many of these games came from traditions that immigrant children brought with them. The 1930s were the golden age of radio. What started as an experiment became the center of daily life. Families gathered around the radio every evening. It brought the world into their living rooms. Family portraits from the 1930s captured one of history's most fragile decades. These photographs were more than memories. They were proof of resilience, proof that families held together when everything else was falling apart. School in the 1930s was strict and demanding. Resources were limited, classrooms were crowded, and discipline came first. Yet children learned, grew, and prepared for futures that no one could predict. Many children had to leave school during the hard times. Learning to sew was both a survival skill and a future profession. These practical skills helped families stretch every penny they had. A baseball team poses proudly in the 1930s. Sports offered both entertainment and escape from daily struggles. For a few hours on the field, players and fans could forget their troubles and just play. A church congregation poses for a portrait in the 1930s. Churches were the center of community life back then. They offered not just spiritual support, but also social connection and practical help for struggling families. Fast food is older than you think. White Castle became America's first fast food chain in the 1930s. They painted everything white to look clean and scientific. Modern restaurant culture started right here. During the hard times, many families grew their own food to survive. This woman stands proudly among her strawberry plants. Backyard gardens were not hobbies. They were lifelines that kept families fed. This is what Thanksgiving looked like in the 1930s. Despite the economic storms outside, families gathered around the table in quiet gratitude. Some things remained sacred, no matter how hard times became. Here is something that might surprise you. This woman is having her freckles removed with carbon dioxide in the 1930s. Beauty standards were demanding, and the treatments were far from comfortable. Beauty was hard work. Children playing on a farm in Missouri during the 1930s. Despite everything happening around them, childhood innocence survived. This photograph captures the pure, resilient spirit of children who found joy even in the hardest times. Even in the darkest economic times, people found reasons to smile. This is the Michigan Theater in Jackson. The 1930s became Hollywood's golden age. For the price of a ticket, anyone could escape into another world. Behind the scenes on a Hollywood film set in the 1930s. The Dream Factory was not always glamorous. Studio lights burned so hot that actors often fainted. Making magic was hard, exhausting work. Kay Francis, known as the Queen of Warner Brothers in the 1930s, her elegant costumes and sophisticated style made her a fashion icon. Movie stars like her gave audiences something beautiful to dream about. Behind the scenes of Gangbusters, one of the most popular radio dramas of the 1930s. The show dramatized real crime stories from FBI files. Families gathered around the radio, completely captivated. The Lindy Hop captured the energy and freedom of the 1930s. Look at the pure excitement in this photograph. The decade was not only about hardship, it was also a time of incredible cultural energy. Dance halls were where young people gathered in the 1930s. Music and movement lifted spirits. Some halls had ladies' choice hours when women could pick their partners. Dancing was freedom and joy combined. Duke Ellington and his orchestra transformed jazz in the 1930s. They elevated it from entertainment to high art. His music proved that genius has no color. Jazz became America's gift to the world. Amusement parks offered affordable escape during the hard times. Carousels, giant Ferris wheels, and wooden roller coasters thrilled families for just a few cents. For a few hours, troubles could wait outside the gates. Fans pack a Chicago stadium waiting for a hockey game in the 1930s. Sports brought communities together. For a few hours, strangers became friends, cheering side by side. Shared excitement created lasting bonds. Friends enjoying the water in the 1930s. Notice the thick wool swimsuits they wore. Swimming was one of the simplest pleasures of summer. No cost, no tickets, just cool water and good company. A family on the road in Oklahoma, photographed by Dorothea Lange. They carried everything they owned, searching for a better life. Even in movement, even in uncertainty, families stayed together and kept hoping. Circus performers in the 1930s brought wonder to small towns across America. For families who could afford a ticket, the circus offered magic, danger, and amazement. A few hours of pure escape from daily life. Family game night in the 1930s. No television, no internet, just a table and each other. Board games like Monopoly became popular during this decade. Simple entertainment brought families closer together every evening. A family road trip around 1930. Automobiles gave ordinary people freedom to explore. Packing up the car and hitting the open road became an American tradition. Adventure was waiting just beyond the next hill. A girl's 9th birthday party, cake, friends, and celebration. Even in difficult times, parents found ways to make their children feel special. Some moments were simply too important to skip. Family Christmas in the 1930s. The tree might be smaller, the gifts fewer, but the warmth remained. Holidays reminded families what truly mattered. Togetherness was the greatest gift of all. A child helps hang baby clothes on the line. Even the youngest family members contributed to daily chores. Responsibility came early in the 1930s. Everyone did their part to keep the family running. Joy always found a way. Movies, music, dancing, sports, and time with loved ones. Despite everything, people celebrated life. Now let us see the love stories and families that carried them through. Now, let us see the love stories. An elegant couple poses together in the 1930s. Despite everything happening around them, People still fell in love, dressed their best, and believed in forever. Horlick's ice cream soda fountain. Places like this were where young couples met and fell in love. A shared milkshake, nervous laughter, and stolen glances. Some of the sweetest memories started here. Romance in a time of uncertainty. This couple found each other when tomorrow was never guaranteed. They held on tight because love was one of the few things that no crisis could take away from them. A young couple poses for their portrait in the 1930s, their eyes full of hope, their future unknown. They made vows when the world offered no certainty. Believing in love took real courage. Wedding dresses in the 1930s reflected the times, elegant but practical, beautiful but modest. Brides wore their finest, even if that finest was borrowed or handmade. The dress mattered less than the promise. Family and friends gathered to celebrate new beginnings. The food might be simple, the decorations modest, but the joy was real. Weddings reminded everyone that hope still existed. A groom holds his mother's hand on his wedding day. In this single moment, we see gratitude, love, and a gentle goodbye to childhood. Mothers raised their sons through impossible times. A mother expecting new life in the 1930s. Bringing a child into an uncertain world took courage. Yet families kept growing, kept hoping, kept believing that tomorrow would be better than today. Life continued. A midwife holds a newborn baby. Most babies were born at home with the help of trusted midwives. Every new life was a small victory, a reason to believe in the future. Siblings pose proudly in front of their family greenhouse. Brothers and sisters grew up together, shared everything, and supported each other through hard times. Family bonds were forged in struggle. A family portrait from the 1930s. Parents and children dressed in their finest, posing for a photograph that would become a treasured heirloom. Generations later, we are still looking at their faces with wonder. Grandparents, parents, and children together in one frame. 3 generations connected by blood and love. The elders passed down wisdom. The young carried hope forward. Family was the thread that held everything together. Look at these faces for a moment. They wanted the same things you want today: love, safety, happiness, and hope for their children. A century has passed, but human desires have never changed. A family photograph from around 1932. Someone in your family might have posed exactly like this. Their story runs through you, whether you know it or not. You are their legacy and their hope. The people in these photographs are not strangers. They could be your great-grandparents, your ancestors, the family you never knew. Their choices shape the world you live in today. They lived, they loved, and they left something behind. Families, traditions, values, and dreams that echoed through generations. The 1930s tested them at every turn. They survived and made our world possible. Children looking toward a future they could not imagine. They would live through war, change, and progress. They carried the hopes of their parents into a new world. Every generation carries the torch forward. Every photograph in this video holds an entire life. Real people with names, dreams, and fears, just like yours. The 1930s are history now, but they deserve to be remembered. They existed. They mattered. The 1930s were exactly like this. Hardship and hope, struggle and joy, poverty and love, all woven together in the same decade. The people in these photographs were real. They had names, dreams, and fears, just like you. Which photograph will stay with you? Tell me in the comments. Subscribe for more hidden history. Every face has a story. See you next time.